TV Uganda, that's on Facebook and YouTube pages. We want to hear from you. We are making 56 years since we got our independence. What are you grateful for? Of course, most of us are the youth, so we didn't see what happened then. And of course, I'll be showing you a short clip on how we gained our independence and what exactly transpired on that particular day. It was an auspicious event that we all were so proud of. Of course, our forefathers that were there on that date, of course. And so that will form our discussion. Drop in your comments. Let's be active on this one. What are you grateful for 56 years down the line? Of course, let's start off with that. And in studios to talk about that is Madam Rita Achiro, who is the Executive Director of Uganda Women's Network. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much and good morning.
Good morning. Let's start off with that video. Of course, when we got our independence, many of us are young people and didn't see that. So let's play that before we get to studios.
Independent country, the state of Uganda. At Entebbe Airport, Prime Minister Milton Obote and His Highness the Kabaka wait to greet the Britannia, which brings the Duke of Kent to represent the Queen at the independence celebration. And with the Duke, of course, his beautiful young Duchess. Lady Coots, wife of the Governor, greets the Duchess while the Duke shakes hands with the Kabaka. A formal occasion, but more than that, because Uganda is gaining its freedom without bitterness, at its own request, becoming an immediate member of the Commonwealth. So the tradition... And at midnight, Sergeant Major Sidney Small of Birmingham lowers the Union Jack that has flown in Uganda for nearly 70 years. At the same moment, the 4th Battalion King's African Rifles becomes the 1st Battalion Uganda Rifles. And to replace the Union Jack, the black, gold and red flag of the new young state, Uganda is born again, free and independent.
How many of you are there? Let us know. Madam Achiro, we've seen the papers today, and the big question is, are we Uhuru yet?
Wow, Mala, that's a huge question to ask. It's almost a thesis to write. What is independence? Independence means self-rule, self-governance, determining your own destiny, and the answers should be given based on that. Are we self-ruled? Are we self-governed? Are we determining our own destiny? Mm-hmm. And this, I'm saying we, meaning not only at governance level, but also as individuals. Can we determine our own destiny? I want to put this as a yes and no. A yes, definitely from the flashback there, I was actually wondering the adrenaline that was going through the people in at the independence ground. Mm-hmm. You say you're young, but compared to independence, I'm equally young. I wasn't there. Yeah. But you could see the excitement of freedom, the excitement of self-determination. People they were not sure of the future, but they were happy to be independent. So independence is a good thing for anybody, whether it's a nation, whether it's an individual. Self-determination is crucial. And to a large extent, yes, we are independent. We took over our own destiny. As Ugandans, we determine the type of governance we want, the type of economy we want. We have that. Now, there are things that our forefathers yearned for when they fought for independence. Mm-hmm. What type of country we wanted to be. You know, a united Uganda, a Uganda that is prosperous, a Uganda that everybody feels free, a Ugandan that everybody has equal opportunities. That is what you want from independence. If you look at some of the countries, if you visited other countries, you get the sense of a foreigner. You feel so out of place. Right. So imagine if this is happening in your own country. So I think when we're at home, we feel this sense of, sense of belonging. that is already the level of independence. We have a sense of belonging, and we should be proud of that, because we just saw recently, until recently in 1994, when our sisters and brothers in South Africa were still, fighting for space, and it was brutal, it was confrontational,
right.
People died, and we've not been able to, at least we didn't get our independence and that there's a plus. And of course, we have progressively improved, either economically, politically, and socially.
Okay.
Now, the loop side of it is, unfortunately, we've gotten stuck into celebration and setting our standards quite low.
Why do you say that?
Why do I say that? Up to today, people will tell you, when you compare the current education level, it's better than 1970, it's better than 1980. It ought to be. It ought to be better. So I don't even see why we need to compare that. Actually, it will be catastrophic for us not to have improved. Even at school, if by these days, if you're still in primary, especially in the urban areas, if you're still in primary by 15, somebody will say something is wrong with you, because there has to be progress at every level. And I think for me, that is where we are caught up as Ugandans. We think whatever is happening is not supposed to be happening, or we think whatever happens to us is a favor, and it's not a right. Children can go to school. I was just looking at the activities in Chotera before we started, and people are celebrating. I have now a degree, I have a master's, I have a job. You ought to have that.
Yeah, it's all right.
It's
not a favor.
So nobody's doing us a favor, and we need to participate in ensuring that it does not end with me. Neither should it end with you. It should be the opportunities I have, the opportunities you have, the opportunities of the people who are in Chotera should be the opportunity for anybody in this country.
Let me ask you a question. The president has been very vocal and very passionate about growing the country with regards to infrastructure and manufacturing. Case in study, of course, this year's budget was a lump sum went into that. Now, the conversation has been at 56 years old of independence. We are still battling with self-rule and, of course, handouts. So if you're saying progress is rightful and that it is our right and it's not a favor, and we are a developing country still grappling with a small envelope of resources, how best can the government go about us developing and not giving off so much to foreigners? Now, case in study is China having its eyes on Africa. How can we still get that aid, that facilitation, and not get at a risk of giving off our country back again to foreigners?
Thank you, and that's my point. When you are self-governed, when you are self-ruled, you set the standards, you set the rules of engagement. It's not bad to engage with foreigners. By the way, this is now a global village.
Right.
So we cannot say totally we are independent, because the world is now a global village and we depend on each other. But the dependence on each other must be negotiated. It must be negotiated and not imposed. It must be negotiated from an empowered point of view. One party shouldn't seem to be powerless and the other seems to be more powerful over a certain nation. So I don't have a problem. Globalization has come and it's going to be here. How do we negotiate without feeling powerless? That is the point. Now, having moved from 1962 to 2018, 56 years later, if Uganda was a human being and working in public service, the retirement age, I think, is in the next 4 years.
Yes.
It's 60, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
So Uganda should be retiring, and you know what retirement means?
Right.
You should have, you should be happy, settling in your country home, enjoying the beautiful fruits of your, hard work.
Yeah.
But is that what we see now? Can we say those who are 56 and above can sit back and say we've done our part, and the younger generation, this is where you have to take from? Unfortunately not. When you look at independence, we talk about self-governance. Are we in charge of our governance? Do we really ensure that the type of leaders we have, the type of elections we have, the type of decisions we have are solely made by Ugandans, or there are other influencing factors? And if those influencing factors are there, who determines? Yes, we can invite people to influence some level, but do we take responsibility for that? We have a lot of challenges still in this country. We've just been going through a number of elections. We're seeing electoral violence. We're seeing people being beaten up. We are seeing there are so many allegations of vote rigging. There's so much that's going on.
You have mentioned governance, and one would argue that if governance is an issue, then the blame is on the electorate, the citizens of the country. So as a citizen, now that you're saying that we are 56, only 4 years shy of retiring, quote unquote, what milestones should we be making as a citizen of the country? Because time and again there's been this conversation that the citizen is yet to get mature enough in terms of making their voice heard on the ballot. Many a times we've been accused as an electorate of receiving handouts in return of our votes. So with regards to that and just moving to the next level, what ideally should happen?
Amala, I agree with you. Citizens have a role, they have a responsibility. Unfortunately, the bigger burden falls on leadership. That's why it is called leadership. You are there for others, to guide them and to invest in the people. So when we talk about citizenship, it just doesn't occur. It just doesn't happen because I got a birth certificate from Mulago, or I got a birth certificate from a health center, 3 or 5. It just doesn't. Citizenship is much more than that. It is the ability to engage, to participate, to take your role and responsibility. Now, what does that mean? That means quality education, that means investing in civic education, that it means people being able to participate, people having the freedom of speech, freedom of association, freedom to elect, freedom to be elected, freedom to benefit from social services. That is what citizenship is about. It's not just waving your birth certificate. Now, you cannot put this responsibility squarely on the citizenship because it's a huge investment. If you want a strong citizenship, it is an investment. That is why issues of the quality of education is crucial, because and as yesterday I was actually at the prayer breakfast, and one of the key things that was mentioned, which is also in the Bible for those who are Christians, and I believe it's also somewhere in the Quran, you reap what you sow. So if you're not investing in the citizenship, building a citizenship, do not expect people to act as if they're citizens, because it's an investment.
We have been immunized.
You have been immunized, very good, and the life expectancy has gone higher,
yes.
But moving human beings moving around, very good, but we need them to engage in this process. You want to be immunized, but you want to be able to work at NTV. You want to be able to engage in decision making. You want to be able not to be battered in your home as a woman. That is what it means. And if I am abused, I should be able to go to a police station, go to an LC1, get remedies, get help. That is what citizenship is. That I report a case, and that case is actually taken to logical conclusion.
Still sticking to the issue of citizenship and democracy and governance. Many political analysts have actually argued that Africa and the people of Africa have not yet gotten to that point whereby they deserve democracy, and that African states can only thrive under the leadership of dictators. What's your take on that?
I think that's a perception which can be argued for and against. The reason why probably such people say that Africa can only be governed by dictatorship is because of the same reason I mentioned. Because if I am in leadership and I do not invest in people, I do not give people space to engage, I do not listen, those are attributes of a leader. Participation, your ability to listen, ability to mentor, ability to support, ability to delegate, groom leadership. So that, if we are not doing that, that's why I said the bigger responsibility is on us leaders. And when I mean leaders, it's not only political leadership, even at home. People who are leaders today just didn't happen. It just did not happen. Yeah? The great man's theory says leaders are born and not made. No, leaders can be made.
Right.
And that depends on how genuine we are, that everybody has a potential, and if we invested in them, they can become leaders. And becoming a leader does not necessarily mean we all must be on top. I can be a leader in my sphere of influence, and that builds blocks into bigger leadership. So when you see the highest leadership having challenges, you can imagine what happens at
down there.
Yeah, exactly. Because the highest leadership is just the apex. So there's so much challenge that even the smallest decisions cannot be taken by the smallest people. The smallest actions to improve the quality of leadership cannot be taken. For example, the citizen engagement. People are not able to engage meaningfully. That means that the leadership at the apex is burdened because you have a weak base. And hence you find so much burden is at the apex. That is why engaging the citizenry, investing in citizenship, the quality of life, the Human Development Index is crucial. Talk about health, talk about education. There is no country, Uganda, and there's this common saying that at independence, Uganda was at the level of the Asian tigers, the Taiwans, you know. Ask yourself, why aren't we there? What did the Asian tigers do differently?
What went wrong? What
went wrong for us? And if you read what the Asian tigers did differently, there are a number of things. They invested in education. They invested in ensuring the quality of citizens responds to the needs of the country.
So what
meaning that they were training people who were productive in the country, and which were, and they still do up to now. They invested in health. They invested in ensuring the population growth is controlled.
So are you saying that our budget is not well prioritized because the biggest chunk went into infrastructure and our roads? Should that instead have gone to education, health and stuff like that, just ensuring that the base of the citizenship is strengthened?
I am one of those people, one of those Ugandans who believe the biggest asset we have right now is the population. And if we invested in this population, quality population, all the others will fall in place. Even the roads will build, because even the taxes that people are complaining about would actually be having more taxes. The current burden is that the majority of the people are dependent on a small population. Those who can actually pay the tax that can sustain this country is less than 20%.
Right.
So if we invested in this population that becomes productive, that we can tax, I'm telling you, would be having Uganda Airlines yesterday. Would having Uganda Railways the other day. Would be having I don't know whether we had the ship and all that. Would be having them yesterday. But you have this small group of people, well educated, with fairly good jobs, but they are just a handful.
Right.
So if we just multiplied that by tenfold and said, yes, we are now let's assume the statistics we have, we're over 40 million now. And by the way, over 50% of that population is below 15 years.
Right.
So those are dependents. So if we have over 50% of our population are dependents, a child of 15 is totally dependent on the parents,
right,
or guardians for that matter. So what does that mean for an economy? And our planning should be reflective of the nature of population we have. That is what the planning should be. If we have 50% and above under the age of 15, what does that mean in terms of planning? If we have only 20% and even below probably who are meaningfully paying taxes, what should our planning be like?
Okay.
So there's a lot that we need to do at planning level.
Let's look at agriculture. And 25% of the Ugandans are under wage employment. Of course, that's where taxes are levied and stuff like that. We also have 20% of Ugandans who are engaged in non-agricultural, activities, which are businesses and all these other things that come into play. Now, 55% of Ugandans are now in agriculture. And the conversation has been on how, as a country, we can move away from rain-fed agriculture and actually commercialize agriculture. Agriculture, since independence, has been our backbone, the backbone of our economy. We've been, busting our thumbs, and saying that if you want a place that is fertile, go to Uganda. If there's a government that has really invested in its agriculture, is Uganda. But that is not happening now. So in terms of just gaining our muscle and focusing our resources on what we are strong at, what will it take?
Mana, I just want to say that I just mentioned about globalization,
right? That
we are a global village, and therefore we should expect competition. This all goes back to what we just talked about, planning. As Uganda, we must of course thank God for the soils we have, for the rainfall, for the population, and the best food that we have in this region. What is our comparative advantage? We must start having the hard talk now. What is our comparative advantage? Yes, the backbone is agriculture, but does that still surface in the regional blocks? Does it still surface with the globalization? And if so, then what do we need to do differently? Because the type of agriculture that we talk about, that agriculture is our backbone, is it the type of agriculture that is going to develop Uganda? And if not, then we need to invest there. Do we really have the potential? Because now you have all this that we are producing, but we can't even sell it. Recently, Kenya was sending back our maize. What is it? We should start asking asking ourselves. 80% of our people depend on land. They're in the rural areas. They're producing, but what type of quality are they producing that can be sold apart from their own consumption? Are they selling that can help them? And is that something that we want to label ourselves in this region and say, yes, we're the gurus in maize, in beans, in sugar, and we specialize on that and outcompete the rest? Or we must start asking the hard questions. Is it really agriculture now? Or there are other things we need to start doing differently? Because I think for a very long time, we've held on to, we are an agrarian country, and therefore we must focus on agriculture. You cannot focus on agriculture without changing the methods.
Changing the methods.
Changing the methods. Again, going back to the Asian tigers, industrialization was key. You cannot talk about agriculture unless you industrialize. Value addition. You're not going to compete with Southern Africa on maize meal unless we change the methods of how we do things.
Just the other day, before we come to a close, we were having a discussion about coffee, and it was International Day of Celebrating Coffee Farmers. Of course, here in Uganda, celebrations were actually underway. And what came to the fore is that we are still selling out coffee in raw form, and what we see in our shelves is what has been imported back to the country, and we pay huge sums of money to access this coffee. So the conversation has been, why don't we add value to this coffee right here at home, create jobs, create industries, and grow our economy?
That reminds me, about 2 weeks ago I was in some meeting and we were served coffee. I don't want to mention which one, but somebody said, please take away this coffee, because why are you serving us this coffee when Uganda has the best coffee? That is what I'm talking about, industrialization. If we are going to pride ourselves with agriculture, we must step up our game, because there are others out there who are competing against us. We must invest in the people. By the way, I must talk about the people I speak for most, the women and girls in this country who toil on the land day and night. What skills do they have? If I'm going to depend on land in a rural area, how am I going to ensure that whatever comes out of that does not only feed my family, but even when I take to the market, I cross the border in Busia, I cross the border in Katuna, I cross the border in West Nile, how am I going to ensure that I have a better product? And until we get there where we are out competing, even amongst ourselves here, when we're out competing in the region, then you say, yeah, we are doing well in agriculture, and that's where our niche is.
So we need to relook our focus.
We need to relook our focus. There are a number of things that we need to look at, issues of land rights for women. You cannot say Uganda is dependent on agriculture, women contribute to over 70% of the agriculture produce, and yet when you look back, the women actually do not have ownership rights. They do not have control rights. So why would I invest energy and time in something that I cannot make decisions over? Women are being beaten after, I work a lot in rural areas. A woman during the planting season, which I think is around April to August, mainly, and then after that the harvest, when the women are planting, they are weeding, there's so much harmony in the home. Hell falls loose when it's time to harvest. You will be reminded, this is not your father's land. You did not come with this land. So whatever comes out of that, the man will make the decision. So issues of laws, land rights, and of course the large-scale land acquisition that we're seeing that is happening in this country. You're going to acquire land, large land in specific areas, but how are the people going to be part of this development? Because development must be with the people, not for the people.
Right.
Unfortunately, many times we think we do development for people. Development must be with the people. Because you cannot develop me. I need to be part of that development. It has to come from my inner will. There has to be a buy-in. And that is some of the things we need to look at. Having said that, we have huge opportunities as a country. We need to take advantage of the current population we have. We need to invest in this population. We need to plan using the population and using the resources available. But also, we need to ensure that people have equal opportunities. Independence is about a sense of belonging. So if I do not feel that sense of belonging, even if it's just at NTV here, you walk in and everybody looks at you like a foreigner or you are not part of it, it really demoralizes. So as we celebrate independence today, the question we should ask ourselves, do we all feel Ugandans?
Wow. Madam Rita Achiro, thank you so much for coming in studios. That will form the conversation today. Our lines are still open. The hashtag is Morning at NTV. That's on Twitter. You can also stream us live and drop in your comments, NTV Uganda. That's on Facebook and YouTube pages. Morning at NTV still continues. Up next, we'll be going on the ground. Of course, celebrations are underway. Of course, and this is happening in Chotere district. So we'll be touching base with one of us of our own on ground, just to see what exactly is happening. Keep it here.
The Daily Monitor brings you the 12th Seeds of Gold Farm Clinic for the Northern region that will focus on dairy, maize, cassava, rice, citrus, pigeon peas, and soya beans. With